The vacation rental looked exactly like the photos on the website when we arrived at the remote mountain cabin in Colorado, with its rustic charm, panoramic views, and the kind of peaceful isolation that promised the perfect escape from our stressful city lives. But as my wife and I unpacked our bags and settled into what we thought would be a romantic weekend getaway, we began to discover that the cabin's previous guests had left behind more than just positive reviews and thank you notes in the guest book. Hidden throughout the property were surveillance cameras disguised as decorative objects, recording devices tucked behind picture frames, and evidence that someone had been using our private vacation rental to document the intimate moments of unsuspecting couples who trusted that their temporary home would provide the privacy and security they had paid for. The realization that our every move had been recorded since the moment we walked through the front door filled us with a violation that went beyond anything we had ever experienced. My name is David, and that discovery taught me that vacation rentals aren't just alternative accommodations. They're stages where strangers can invade your most private moments, where the trust you place in property owners can be exploited in ways that traditional hotels with professional oversight could never allow. Ever wondered why some vacation rental hosts seem overly interested in your personal activities? Ever questioned why certain properties have an unusual number of decorative items positioned at strategic angles? Share this video if you've stayed in a vacation rental and felt like your privacy was being violated in ways you couldn't quite explain, because tonight I'm sharing 3 true accounts that will make you examine every mirror, every picture frame, and every decorative object in every vacation rental you've ever trusted. These aren't isolated incidents or exaggerated stories designed to scare people away from vacation rentals. These are real experiences from real travelers who learned that when you stay in someone else's property, you're placing your trust in people whose backgrounds, intentions, and mental stability are completely unknown to you. Jessica and Mark were a married couple in their late 20s who booked a highly rated beach house on the Outer Banks of North Carolina for their 5th wedding anniversary. Choosing the property based on its stunning oceanfront location, luxurious amenities, and the host's description of a romantic retreat that would provide the perfect setting for celebrating their milestone anniversary. The beach house was located in an exclusive area known for its privacy and natural beauty, with direct beach access and the kind of isolation that promised an intimate getaway. The property listing featured professional photographs of a beautifully appointed beach house with modern furnishings, a gourmet kitchen, and panoramic ocean views that justified the premium price Jessica and Mark were paying for their special anniversary celebration. The host, who identified herself as Patricia, had excellent reviews from previous guests who praised the property's cleanliness, amenities, and the host's attention to guest comfort and privacy. Jessica and Mark's arrival at the beach house exceeded their expectations, with Patricia providing a warm welcome and a detailed tour of the property that highlighted all the amenities and features that would make their anniversary celebration memorable and romantic. The house was exactly as advertised, with luxury furnishings, modern appliances, and the kind of attention to detail that reflected a host who took pride in providing exceptional guest experiences. For the first 2 days of their stay, Jessica and Mark's anniversary celebration was everything they had hoped for, with perfect weather, stunning sunsets, and the kind of romantic atmosphere that made their beach house rental feel like a luxury resort experience. The couple established a comfortable routine of morning beach walks, afternoon relaxation, and evening dinners on the deck overlooking the ocean. But on the 3rd night of their stay, Jessica discovered something that shattered their sense of privacy and security, a sophisticated surveillance system that had been recording their every move since they arrived at the beach house. Jessica found the first camera hidden in a decorative seashell on the bedroom dresser. Its tiny lens pointed directly at the bed where she and Mark had been sleeping and sharing intimate moments. Jessica's investigation of the bedroom camera led to the discovery of additional surveillance equipment throughout the beach house, including cameras in the bathroom, living room, kitchen, and even the outdoor deck areas where she and Mark had been relaxing and enjoying their anniversary celebration. The surveillance system was extensive and professionally installed, with cameras disguised as everyday objects. Comment below if you've ever found hidden cameras in your vacation rental, because what Jessica and Mark discovered about Patricia's operation proved that some hosts view their properties not as accommodations to provide, but as stages for voyeuristic entertainment that they can profit from by exploiting their guests' most intimate moments. The realization that their entire anniversary celebration had been recorded without their knowledge or consent filled Jessica and Mark with a sense of violation that went beyond anything they had ever experienced. The couple realized that their most intimate moments, private conversations, and personal activities had been documented by strangers whose intentions and plans for the recorded material were unknown and potentially criminal. Jessica and Mark's attempts to confront Patricia about the surveillance system were met with denial and hostility, with the host claiming that the cameras were for security purposes and that guests had been informed about their presence in the property listing and rental agreement. But Jessica and Mark's review of their rental documentation revealed no mention of surveillance equipment, and the hidden nature of the cameras made it clear they were designed to record guests without their knowledge. The situation became more disturbing when Jessica and Mark discovered that their recorded activities were being transmitted to external locations and were potentially being shared with other people or posted on internet sites that specialized in voyeuristic content. The couple realized that their privacy violation was not just a matter of unauthorized recording, but was part of a larger operation that exploited vacation rental guests. Jessica and Mark immediately checked out of the beach house and reported the surveillance system to local law enforcement, vacation rental platform administrators, and privacy protection agencies. The couple's documentation of the surveillance equipment and their cooperation with investigations were essential for exposing Patricia's illegal activities. The investigation revealed that Patricia had been operating her surveillance system for over 2 years, recording hundreds of guests and accumulating thousands of hours of intimate footage that she had been sharing with online communities and selling to people who were willing to pay for voyeuristic content featuring unsuspecting vacation rental guests. Patricia's operation was sophisticated and profitable, with multiple properties and recording systems. Jessica and Mark's experience taught them that vacation rental properties could expose guests to sophisticated privacy violations that were designed to exploit the trust and vulnerability of travelers who expected their temporary homes to provide the same privacy and security as their own residences. But if you think voyeuristic surveillance represents the most dangerous threat that vacation rental guests can face, wait until you hear what happened to Robert in the Montana wilderness. Because sometimes the most terrifying vacation rental experiences involve properties that serve as fronts for serious criminal operations, where your peaceful retreat becomes a dangerous encounter with criminals who view your presence as either useful cover or a threat that needs to be eliminated. Robert was a freelance photographer in his early 30s who booked a remote cabin in the mountains of Montana for a solo photography retreat, seeking the kind of wilderness isolation and natural beauty that would provide inspiration for his landscape photography work and allow him to disconnect from the digital distractions of his normal urban lifestyle. Robert had chosen the cabin based on its location in a pristine wilderness area, its rustic charm, and the host's description of a peaceful retreat. The cabin was located on a large private property surrounded by national forest land, with no immediate neighbors and limited access that promised the complete solitude that Robert needed for his photography project. The listing described a fully equipped cabin with basic amenities, reliable solar power, and the kind of off-grid experience that would allow Robert to focus entirely on his creative work. The host, who identified himself as William, had positive reviews from previous guests who had used the property for similar retreats and outdoor activities. William had been responsive and helpful during Robert's booking process, providing detailed information about the property's location, amenities, and the local area's photography opportunities. Robert's arrival at the cabin proceeded smoothly, with William providing clear directions to the remote property and meeting Robert in person to provide a tour of the cabin and explain the off-grid systems and safety procedures that were necessary for staying alone in the isolated wilderness location. William appeared to be a friendly, knowledgeable outdoorsman who was genuinely interested in providing a quality experience. For the first week of his stay, Robert's photography retreat was productive and inspiring, with perfect weather conditions and stunning natural scenery that provided endless opportunities for landscape photography. Robert established a comfortable routine of early morning and late afternoon photography sessions, with midday periods devoted to processing images and planning future shoots. But during the second week of his stay, Robert began to notice that he was not as alone in the wilderness as he had expected, and that someone was conducting surveillance of his activities and movements around the property. Robert would find evidence that his photography equipment had been moved or examined while he was away from the cabin, and he would occasionally see signs of human presence in areas where no other people should have been present. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you've ever stayed in a remote vacation rental and realized you were being used as cover for criminal operations. Because what Robert discovered about Williams' activities proved that some hosts use legitimate rental businesses as fronts for illegal operations that put unsuspecting guests in serious danger. Robert's investigation of the surveillance activities revealed that William was using the remote cabin rental as a cover for illegal activities that took advantage of the property's isolation and the trust of guests who believed they were staying in a legitimate vacation rental. Robert discovered that William was involved in drug manufacturing and distribution operations that used the remote location to avoid detection by law enforcement agencies. The situation became more dangerous when Robert realized that William was not just using the property for drug operations, but was also involved in more serious criminal activities that included weapons trafficking and other illegal enterprises that attracted dangerous criminal associates to the remote wilderness area. Robert's presence at the cabin as a legitimate guest provided cover for William's criminal operations, but it also put Robert at risk. Robert's attempts to leave the property early and escape from the dangerous situation were complicated by William's increasing paranoia and hostility with the host, becoming suspicious that Robert had discovered his criminal activities and might report them to law enforcement agencies. William began to monitor Robert's communications and movements more closely. The situation escalated when Robert was confronted by William's criminal associates, who made it clear that Robert's knowledge of their activities was unwelcome and that his safety would be threatened if he attempted to report their illegal operations to law enforcement or other authorities. The criminal associates were armed and dangerous, with the resources and willingness to use violence. Robert's escape from the dangerous situation required him to use his knowledge of wilderness survival and photography equipment to evade the criminals who were monitoring his activities and to reach a location where he could contact law enforcement for assistance. Robert's escape was complicated by the remote location and the criminals' familiarity with the wilderness area. Robert immediately contacted federal law enforcement agencies and provided detailed information about Williams' criminal operations and the dangerous situation that vacation rental guests were being exposed to at the remote Montana property. Robert's cooperation with the investigation was essential for exposing the criminal activities. The investigation revealed that William had been using his vacation rental business as a front for extensive criminal operations that included drug manufacturing, weapons trafficking, and money laundering activities that generated millions of dollars in illegal revenue. William's remote property provided the perfect cover for criminal activities that required isolation. Robert's experience taught him that remote vacation rental properties could expose guests to serious criminal activities that used legitimate rental businesses as covers for illegal operations, and that travelers needed to be aware of the potential risks of staying in isolated locations where criminal activities could be conducted without detection. But even criminal operations using vacation rentals as fronts seem manageable compared to what happened to Amanda in Savannah. Because sometimes the most terrifying vacation rental experiences do not involve living criminals at all. They involve properties where previous residents never really left, and where your peaceful getaway becomes a supernatural encounter with entities who view your presence as an intrusion into their eternal residence. Amanda was a social worker in her late 20s who booked a historic Victorian house in Savannah, Georgia for a solo vacation that would allow her to explore the city's famous architecture gardens and cultural attractions, while staying in a property that promised to provide an authentic Southern hospitality experience. Amanda had chosen the Victorian house based on its beautiful restoration, its location in Savannah's historic district, and the host's description of a property that combined historical charm with modern amenities. The Victorian house was a meticulously restored 19th century mansion that had been converted into a luxury vacation rental with period furnishings. Elegant decor and historical details that promised to provide guests with an immersive experience of Savannah's antebellum charm and Southern elegance. The listing emphasized the property's historical significance and its careful restoration. The host, who identified herself as Margaret, had excellent reviews from previous guests who praised the property's beauty, historical authenticity, and the host's knowledge of Savannah's history and attractions. Margaret had been responsive and enthusiastic during Amanda's booking process, providing detailed information about the house's history and the local area's cultural offerings. Amanda's arrival at the Victorian house exceeded her expectations, with Margaret providing a comprehensive tour that highlighted the property's historical features, period furnishings, and the careful restoration work that had preserved the house's 19th century character. The house was beautifully maintained and decorated, with authentic period details and modern conveniences. For the first 3 days of her stay, Amanda's Savannah vacation was everything she had hoped for, with perfect weather for exploring the city's historic district and beautiful gardens, and comfortable accommodations that provided the ideal base for her cultural and architectural exploration. Amanda established a routine of morning walks through the historic neighborhoods, afternoon visits to museums and historic sites. But on the 4th night of her stay, Amanda began to experience phenomena that challenged her understanding of what she had assumed was simply a beautifully restored historical property. Amanda was awakened by sounds coming from other parts of the house, including footsteps, voices, and what appeared to be the movement of furniture and other objects in rooms that should have been empty during her solo stay. Amanda's investigation of the sounds revealed that they were coming from areas of the house that were supposed to be private guest areas. But when she checked these rooms, she found them empty and undisturbed, with no explanation for the sounds that had awakened her. The sounds would resume whenever Amanda returned to her bedroom, creating a pattern of activity that seemed deliberately timed. Hit that like button if you've ever stayed in a historic vacation rental and realized you weren't the only one living there, because what Amanda discovered about the Victorian house's permanent residents proved that some historic properties come with occupants who never checked out and do not appreciate living guests sharing their eternal home. The disturbing phenomena escalated when Amanda began to see figures moving through the house during the night, shadowy forms that would appear in doorways and corridors, but would disappear when Amanda tried to investigate or make direct contact. The figures appeared to be people in period clothing who moved through the house as if they were familiar with its layout and were going about normal daily activities. Amanda's research into the house's history revealed that the property had been the site of multiple deaths over the years, including family members who had died of disease accidents and other causes during the 19th and early 20th centuries when the house had been a private family residence. The historical records suggested that the house had a reputation for supernatural activity. Amanda realized that her solo vacation in the historic Victorian house had become a supernatural encounter that was far beyond anything she had expected or prepared for when she booked what she thought was simply a beautifully restored historical property. Amanda's attempts to contact Margaret for assistance or explanation were unsuccessful, as the host was not responding to her messages. The situation became more frightening when the supernatural activity began to focus specifically on Amanda, with the ghostly figures appearing to be aware of her presence and attempting to communicate or interact with her in ways that suggested the spirits were not simply residual hauntings, but were conscious entities with intentions and purposes. Amanda's attempts to leave the house early were complicated by her emotional investment in her Savannah vacation and her reluctance to abandon what was supposed to be a special solo travel experience. But as the supernatural activity intensified and became more personal and threatening, Amanda realized that her safety and well-being were more important than her vacation plans. Amanda checked out of the Victorian house early and found alternative accommodations for the remainder of her Savannah vacation. But her experience at the historic property had fundamentally changed her understanding of vacation rentals and the potential risks of staying in properties with unknown histories and supernatural reputations. The investigation that followed Amanda's report revealed that Margaret was aware of the house's supernatural activity and had been deliberately concealing this information from guests to maintain bookings and positive reviews. The investigation also revealed that several other guests had reported similar supernatural experiences, but that their complaints had been dismissed or ignored. Amanda's experience taught her that historic vacation rental properties could expose guests to supernatural phenomena that were not disclosed by hosts or rental platforms, and that the atmospheric charm and historical significance that made such properties attractive could also make them unsuitable for guests who were not prepared for paranormal encounters. These three accounts from vacation rental guests across America reveal a disturbing truth about the properties we trust for temporary lodging. The homes and cabins that promise rest and relaxation can harbor secrets that turn dream vacations into nightmares and expose us to dangers that traditional hotels and accommodations could never allow. Jessica and Mark's discovery of extensive surveillance equipment in their anniversary beach house proved that some hosts view their properties not as accommodations to provide, but as stages for voyeuristic entertainment that they can profit from by exploiting their guests' most intimate moments. Robert's encounter with criminal operations at a remote Montana cabin demonstrated that some vacation rental properties serve as fronts for serious illegal activities that put unsuspecting guests in danger. Amanda's supernatural experiences in a historic Savannah mansion revealed that some historic properties come with undisclosed paranormal activity that can transform peaceful getaways into terrifying encounters with entities who view living guests as unwelcome intruders. The most chilling aspect of these accounts is not just the individual violations and dangers themselves. It's the realization that these risks are inherent in the vacation rental model, where strangers open their properties to travelers without the professional oversight, security protocols, and accountability standards that govern traditional hospitality businesses. Jessica and Mark had no warning that their highly rated, professionally presented beach house would expose them to sophisticated voyeuristic exploitation that violated their most intimate moments. Robert had no indication that his peaceful photography retreat would become a dangerous encounter with armed criminals who viewed his presence as either useful cover or a threat to be eliminated. Amanda had no clue that her cultural exploration of historic Savannah would become a supernatural encounter with entities who had never left their former home and didn't appreciate living guests sharing their space. If you're currently using vacation rental platforms or considering private property accommodations, if you've ever felt uncomfortable about host behavior or discovered evidence that your privacy had been compromised, or if you've experienced unexplained phenomena during stays in historic or remote properties, trust your instincts and remember that the unique experiences and cost savings of vacation rentals might not be worth the risks. Ring that notification bell if these stories have made you reconsider your vacation rental choices. And remember that understanding these risks and warning signs could be the difference between a memorable vacation and a traumatic experience that changes how you think about travel and accommodation safety. The next time you're booking vacation accommodations, remember these stories and ask yourself whether the money you save and the unique experiences you gain from staying in private properties are worth placing your safety, privacy, and peace of mind in the hands of strangers whose only qualification is owning property and creating an attractive online listing. Before you go, check out the playlist in the description for more true vacation rental horror stories that could change how you travel. Because in the end, The most important part of any vacation is returning home safely with your privacy intact and your personal security uncompromised, and no amount of money saved or unique experience gained is worth risking your safety in properties where the owners may be concealing surveillance equipment, criminal activities, or supernatural phenomena. Comment below if these stories have made you reconsider your vacation rental choices, and remember that sometimes the most dangerous part of traveling is not getting to your destination. It's what happens after you arrive and discover that the people you're trusting with your safety and privacy have intentions that go far beyond providing comfortable accommodations for paying guests. Stay safe out there, and remember that traditional accommodations with professional staff, established security protocols, and corporate accountability might cost more, but they provide protections and oversight that private properties simply cannot offer, no matter how good their reviews or how professional their hosts appear to be.